was a brutal, terrible night in Georgia for the Kentucky Wildcats, who, of course, fall to the Georgia Bulldogs 51-13 in a game that never really felt close. We're going to open up the phones here in just a minute, but it was a very disappointing game. I at no point did I think Kentucky was going to win going into it. I actually thought it was kind of unlikely, but I certainly thought they would be competitive because, honestly, they've been competitive with Georgia for years. Better Georgia teams than this one have been Kentucky has been competitive with them even when I wasn't sure that those teams were better than this one. And, honestly, Kentucky was really never in the game. It was a mixture of, I think, on the defensive side, just getting destroyed. I mean, I look at the offense and the defense sort of two separate ways in this game. I'll start with defense. I think defensively, Kentucky, that's the worst I've seen a Mark Stoops, Brad White team get beaten defensively. I mean, Tennessee was bad last year, but I felt like Georgia would score every single time they had the ball. So I thought it was also just an out scheme thing. I mean, Georgia guys were all open the entire game, and that was really surprising to me how we had no resistance for them whatsoever defensively, and we tackled poorly, a lot, probably more missed tackles. I don't know the stats, but it felt like more missed tackles tonight than I had seen in all the games combined. But just more of a disheartening poor performance defensively. Like I said, I felt this way after the Tennessee game last year, but, part of what Tennessee did, at least last year, is they just had such a good quarterback and such great receivers, and we just couldn't cover them, and there wasn't a whole lot you could do. I felt like this was systematic beat down today. The offensive line was better, but guys were just open. I mean, when Brock Bowers is open by 20 yards, that's a scheme thing. I mean, he's a great talent, but he shouldn't be open by 20 yards. And if you're leaving their best player open by 20 yards, then you're just getting out-schemed. And I was very surprised to see that happen. Then offensively, I actually thought, even though they only put up 13 points, for 3 quarters at least, I actually thought Kentucky played all right offensively, but so many self-inflicted errors. The two holding, the offensive line issues, it's easy to just get completely mad at Jagger, and he deserves a lot of criticism because those were 2 terrible penalties. I mean, you literally could say he took 10 points at least off the board with his own penalties. The personal foul of which was, just inexcusable. But that's not the only thing. I mean, the rest of the offensive line didn't play great. And Devin Leary just didn't play great. I mean, he had some good throws, but too many bad throws. He missed Tavion Robinson for what could have been a touchdown. And then on a drive where I think you hoped that Kentucky could maybe do something right before halftime to keep the game competitive, he made 2 terrible throws, and then we got sacked. And coming out of the half, that was pretty much it. I mean, that was the game, and it kind of was what it was. It was just completely disheartening. And then, listen, I'm a big fan of this staff, but some really just it didn't matter because the game was out of hand, but just some bizarre decisions throughout the game. I mean, the way they handled the end of the first half, where they don't call timeout when Georgia has the ball, then they get the ball, they make 3 terrible decisions, and then immediately give the ball back and give up 3 points. Like, that's the kind of stuff that would lose you a close game. So it's just one bad thing after another. And it's almost difficult to pick out what was the worst because it was all awful, with the exception of maybe Liam Cohen's offensive game plan, which I thought actually was pretty good. I'm not sure that anything was good. I think everything was a disaster. And I kind of thought this program was beyond that. I didn't think we were beyond losing games like this, but I did think we were beyond losing games. Well, let me put it a different way. I didn't think we were beyond losing to teams like Georgia. I did think we were beyond losing to teams like Georgia like this. But we did. And I think it'll be a great test of Kentucky football, Mark Stoops, the coaches, to see if they can come back and win next week. Because, you can win next week, be 6-1 going into the bye, and still do great things this year. And I'm not as apocalyptic as a lot of people I see online. This is a terrible performance. But let's be real. We have one of these every year. We have one of these games every year. Usually it's not against a really good team. Usually it's like at Mississippi State or at Tennessee. Usually we actually show up and play pretty well against these good teams. Didn't happen this time. But next week will be the test. Because next week you either win, you go 6-1 into the bye, and you still can do something really good with this year, or the wheels start falling off. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. But for tonight, huge disappointment. Huge disappointment. It just is. I did not think they were going to win. I didn't even necessarily think they'd have a chance to be really in it at the end, but I certainly didn't think this was going to happen. And I'm really disheartened by especially the defense. The offense, I don't know what Devin Leary is. 6 games in, he's been disappointing. He just has. And I think for people, I think fans by their very nature like to think about what's next. And we were all so dismissive of even Will last year to sort of say, well, he's obviously better than Will. Well, he's not been. And that's frustrating because this whole, I think, offensive scheme was designed under the idea that you could count on him to make big plays. And he's made some, but he's missed more than he's made. And it's frustrating. And then the stupidity of the personal fouls on Jagger and Deion Walker are game-changing plays. We were never in it after that. And those are 2 of our most important players, and their heads just weren't in it. And this is what I hope. I like Mark Stoops, the way he coaches his team. I like that this team has a chip on their shoulder. I like that they sort of seem to get off on being discounted. But I also would say you need to play hungry, but at times humble. And this team at times this year has felt like maybe they brag a little more than what they've accomplished. It's great beating Florida. But when you're out there, I saw at one point we're down 21, and we made a tackle. The guy got 4 yards, and one of our DBs was doing the thing like you're too short. We're down 21, and they still even had a gain on the play. And we're hitting people. I mean, we're hitting people after the clock's over, after the whistle. There was a little arrogance with this group that I thought showcased through tonight. And I think maybe a little bit of unwarranted arrogance by this group. And I hope personally they were humbled because I think they needed to be a little bit. Yeah, we've beaten Florida 4 of the last 6 years, but that's the team you have to beat eventually. And we lost 51-13 on national television. It's embarrassing. And I think we'll see a lot about what the character of this group is and what the character of this program is by what they do next week. I did think it was interesting. Mark Stoops, if you heard his post-game comments. Billy, did you hear what he said about last year in those comments?
No, what was that?
I thought this was really interesting. If you go back and hear what he said to Tom Leach, he said, we can't let what happened last year happen this year where we had adversity and we separated. There were a lot of people that said that about last year's team. But I don't know if he meant to say that, Billy, but he said it. And I think that's true. I think when they lost Tennessee last year, the season fell apart in a lot of ways. A lot of guys went in different directions. There was blame placed on Next week will be the test. This is embarrassing, and I'm freely willing to sit and listen to people tonight complain about it. But we'll find out what this program is next week against Missouri. A team that could have beaten LSU is probably disappointed about it. You're going to be playing for second place in the SEC and a chance to play Tennessee to finish maybe in second place. And you're at home at night. If you can't win next week, then I think you start to get concerned. 859-280-2287. We'll open up the phones. I'll finish with this. I want you to think about the rest of the schedule. Every game left on the schedule, you can win. Every game left on the schedule, you can lose. I can't remember a UK schedule ever being like that in my life. Missouri at home, you can beat them. They can also beat you. Tennessee at home, you need to play well, but you could beat them. But they can also beat you. At South Carolina, at Mississippi State, same thing. Alabama, they're better than you, but if you play great, who knows? And then Louisville's 6-0 and might be 10-0. There's a world they could be 11-0 going in the last game. Look at their schedule. They play Pitt, Duke, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and a Miami team that could have kneeled and didn't and just lost to Georgia Tech. You could win all those games. You could win none of those games. And that's what the rest of our season is like. And it's going to be a real test to see what happens. 859-280-2287. We will open up the phones. It's late at night. It's been a crazy night across college football. We have to note that the team down the street beat Notre Dame at home by a significant amount, and they are 6-0. I still don't think they're great, but it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a world, Billy, they could come into that game 11-0. I don't think they will. They go to Pitt, but think about it. They go to Pitt. They host Duke. Virginia and Virginia Tech are awful. Then they go to Miami, and then they play us. Like, Billy, that's doable, isn't it?
I mean, college football playoff game on the line?
I mean, I don't think look, they still have to win the ACC championship. Florida State will drill them. But let me tell you this. There's a very good chance they come into that game with us where if they win, they'd play in the ACC final with a chance to go to the playoff. That is not crazy. For a team that I don't even think is very good, it's there. So we, on the other hand, have 6 games where we could go 6-0 or 0-6. And to be honest with you, I have no idea what we're going to do.